So true.
All right, welcome everybody to Legal Tech Week for what is it? April 25th,
Yep.
2025. And this is, if you don't know where you are, the show where we talk about the top stories of the week in legal tech and innovation and whatever else suits our fancy. I'm Bob Ambrogi. I write a blog called Law Sites and have a podcast called Law Next. And in celebration of Joe's birthday this week. Joe, happy birthday! And why don't you kick off the introductions today?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no, Joe Patrice from Above the Law and Thinking Like a Lawyer. And uh, happy 29th birthday to me. Yeah, and I'm here to yeah, you know, talk some legal tech. And I see Victor's already got his shirt on. So yeah, he had a good draft last night. Looking forward to the next few rounds. Bye.
All right. And Julie did show up. Good.
I
Can you
did. I
save
had
us from a mantle?
That's okay.
Julie,
I had technical difficulties, aka finishing lunch. I'm Julie Shabawale, and I'm a Canadian legal tech writer writing for the Canadian Bar Association, The Walrus, which is a national general interest magazine in Canada. And I'm also here to say happy birthday to Joe.
right. And Victor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victor Lee. I am assistant managing editor for the ABA Journal. And yeah, happy birthday to Joe. And yeah, I was very glad we didn't draft Deion Sanders as a little kid because if anyone knows anything about me, is that Deion Sanders was my least favorite player growing up. And so it would have been really weird having to now root for his son on my team. So yeah.
Yeah, you're that. All right. And last but not least today, Steve.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Embry. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads. I also write from time to time for Above the Law and One Legal Blog.
All right. Did you say one legal blog? What is that? What is what? I'm like, what's one legal?
It's a mystery.
Oh, okay. All right. Um, and continuing with the birthday theme, Joe, why don't we have you go first? Not just because it's your birthday, but I don't know, you've got a couple stories this week that are kind of head scratchers, and I don't know which one you want to start with, but I kind of know
Yeah.
what you want to say.
Well, yeah, that is a good question. I'll flip a coin. So uh, we had they're both AI related, which you wouldn't be shocked to hear in 2025. The first of which I'll do the bar exam first. The first of which
That's what I
is
was
that
hoping you'd do first.
yeah, the California bar exam in February was something of a disaster. There were tons of issues, given that they have moved off of the multi-state bar exam, which is run by the NCBE. The NCBE imposes a lot of restrictions on states as far as how they can test people. No remote, you have to have, this kind of venue and that kind of venue. This results in a state like California, with as many people take the bar there and as geographically spread out as the state is, this results in them spending way too much money to the point that they are heading toward bankruptcy in trying to administer this test. The NCB is the National Conference of Bar Examiners. It was not interested at all in accommodating them, and so they have struck out on their own to write their own test. This became a bit of a disaster as they dilly-dallied long enough to find themselves up against the wall. They threw together a test kind of at the last minute. They then had a bunch of technical difficulties and proctoring issues in trying to run it. Everybody involved says it was a horrible disaster. No one's disputing that. Fast forward, though, the part that got me this week is there's a new revelation because the revelations coming from February have been bad enough, and they decided not to pull the Band-Aid off all at once, and they decided to add a little bit more to it, which is they made the revelation that they actually used AI as part of the process in writing the questions. Now, to be clear, not in the process of writing almost all the questions. It was a handful of questions, like 20. And those questions were being put together by the psychometrician. All of these questions were on the
Whatever the
back
hell a
end. Then
psychometrician is.
Yeah, it sounds like a L. Ron Hubbard villain, but it's as I say in my piece, but it's actually those are the people whose uh, specialty, job, whatever. They are the people who read tests and tell you if the test questions are sufficiently understandable by people to be good test questions. So they aren't legal experts, but they're testing experts. And so they have a role in building bar exams and stuff too. They apparently utilized AI as part of their process, probably given their role, probably in taking questions written by others and adjusting them in ways that are more readable. So, uh, this doesn't seem all that crazy to me. It's not like they've turned over all their question writing to AI. They didn't say even that it was written by them. It said they were involved, that it was involved at some point in the development. Probably was something like this where they put the original question in, got some rewordings out that were a little bit clearer, they felt. All questions were checked by subject matter experts before they ended up on the actual test. I don't see a problem here. That said, because the bar exam and AI are two subjects that everyone's very calm and cool, rational about, uh, folks went absolutely bananas about this. They're calling for everyone's head involved in this because AI should not be involved. And I was like, it's just going to be a theme that we've run into this already in a bunch of other settings, but this is going to be a recurring theme of people freaking out anytime the word AI is involved in any kind of situation. I didn't see much of a problem, but that is what's out there.
Yeah, my one of my reporters, Julianne Hill's been following this like crazy, and to the point where I joke that like she probably knows what they're gonna order for lunch before they do. Yeah, I mean, I agree with Joe. The AI part is not even the most alarming part of any of it. I mean, including all the stuff that led up to it. I mean, because like they contracted with Kaplan to do the exam, and Kaplan agreed that they would then get out of the bar prep business as part of the deal because they figured it'd be a conflict of interest for them to just to still be involved with like preparing bar questions and then preparing bar prep courses and then running the bar. So I think one of the problems one of the things that came out of this was that they took some of the exam questions from one of their like their baby bar. So so it's like they didn't even write like allegedly they didn't even write like all the questions. They took some questions from bar prep materials, which then raises the question: is that a conflict? And then I think they also I think that the company that used the AI was like ACS Ventures, which is the psychometrician vendor or whatnot. And I think there's also a question of whether like they should be the one because like if they're weighing in as to whether these questions are valid, and then they're using AI and then creating these questions, then that potentially raises a conflict as well. It's like, well, if they're weighing in on the validity of these questions, but then they're creating some of these questions and using AI to create some of these questions, then that raises a whole other issue as to whether or not they're really independent. But again, this all is a sideshow compared to the, what happened in February to these, poor students who like, who had to who show up on, probably the most stressful day of their lives, thinking that they're gonna take an exam and then have to deal with this crap. So,
But I thought that was one thing that was interesting. One of the parts that just kind of had me scratching my head about it was the nonchalance with which they revealed that they used AI, as though nobody was going to think twice about it, or that it wasn't a big deal. And maybe it wasn't a big deal. I don't know. I don't know anything about the substance of the questions, but still, there seemed to be a certain amount of cluelessness about the way they brought this out.
It's California. I'm sure that the people who in charge of the announcement are like Silicon Valley people who are like, oh, I mean, we've turned everything over to AI. Why would we worry?
Exactly. They're like surprised that, oh, didn't you know we're already using AI? You should be like, oh, good. AI is a part of this process. I feel like AI is okay. Do you guys know the meme from the TV show Community where Donald Glover walks into the room with the pizza box and there's multiple yeah, that's this situation, right? I was reading this article and I was like, oh, and of course AI has entered into the chat. Like it's just this is bad on so many levels, and it's California, right? We understand that this is a state that administers a large number of people take the bar exam in California, right? And so I feel like
Says a
this is
woman
going
who
to
has a
be
surfboard on the wall behind her there. Is that
I'm always on the beach, you feel.
right?
But yeah, I feel like this is going to be a case that taught in an MBA program somewhere about how not to launch things, how not to do crisis communications and announce a new like product or service or something at the same time, because the way that they worded what they're doing with AI, I'm actually still not clear like how AI is like why they're utilizing AI. Is it for efficiency? Is it to create better questions? Is it to create a better outcome for the people taking the exam? Is it to save money or time? I actually don't have any understanding why AI is being used in the first place.
Yeah, and I I kind of am making the logical leap, given that they do say it was the psychometrician who did it, that it probably was a readability issue. But like, yeah, we don't know. To borrow from another community meme, since we've already started that down that road, I very much viewed, and this goes to what Victor was saying, I very much viewed this story as people saying, I can accept all of the problems with the taking of the exam, but I draw the line at AI. It really was like this is such the non-issue compared to how bad everything else with the California bar was.
Yeah.
Well, it was
But if
like
it was a
they rolled it
readability
out.
issue, go
Well, it
ahead.
was like they rolled it out and like, because I mean, what's the first thing that they always tell you before you roll out a new? You stress test the hell out of it, come up with the worst possible scenarios. You test those to make sure it can withstand like even like a nuclear strike or a hurricane or an earthquake, probably more likely in the middle of it. And then that's your baseline, and then everything else, you're ready for. Which I mean, yeah, that takes months and months and months, maybe even years. And like it looks like I mean, they closed a deal for this like months like only a couple of months before they had to deliver the products. It's like, well, what are you
Yeah.
doing? Of course, you weren't gonna have enough time to do it.
I mean,
I
when they
mean,
first, oh, I was going to
go
say,
ahead.
when they first raised the issue that they were going bankrupt unless they changed something, they brought it up to a vote and it got tabled and then kicked down the road because people were like, whoa, change. I don't know if we want to do that. And I was like, well, every moment you're delaying this change, the urgency of the moment gets worse and worse. And then you end up here.
And I totally
This
get
kind
why
of
they
a
had to why they had to change because like I can only imagine what it's like to like rent out like the Cal Palace and then like a bunch of venues like that all across the state for like what was like is a 3 day exam or 4 day exam? I don't remember. Traditionally, I think it's a 3 day, right? Yeah.
I think they moved
So
back to two, but they
okay,
used to be three.
used to be
Yeah.
3. Yeah. When I was it was 3, and so when I was your age, I was no, and so yeah, it was just it's I get why it was a fiscal nightmare for them, but you got to have plans.
yeah. This meshes in an interesting way with the story that Steve highlighted for us to talk about this week, which also has to do with AI and test taking, but in a pretty different context, right, Steve?
Yeah, it's on the one hand, and you would might read this and say it doesn't have anything to do with lawyers, but I think it very well could. Apparently, a couple of students at Columbia have created this platform, and it basically sits on your laptop, and when you're in a Zoom meeting or any sort of virtual uh, meeting, it will see what's on the screen and it will hear what's going on. It will offer you suggestions and clues as to what to do and what to say. What these guys were doing, I think, is they were interviewing for jobs, and it was being done virtually, and it was giving suggestions as to what they should say. And I think there were even some substantive questions, like how would you go about solving this coding problem?
Yeah, no,
Like these
this is
guys,
this leak code thing. It's the all computer engineers have to do this leak coding test, which is
yeah,
LEET code, which is
right.
like a day-long thing where they're given these coding problems on with somebody watching them on Zoom as they try and solve these problems. And so what it does is it was using AI to do the coding.
Right.
But it
Right,
was
and
doing it in a
answer the
way that the
questions.
person watching couldn't see. It was all transparent.
Yeah, yeah, because well, like we're on the screen now, and if I had this software, it would say, "Here's how you should react to Bob's comment," or
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
"Here's how to show you know more than everybody else." And I mean, it's all these kind of different things, and they've gotten what $5.3 million of seed funding to pursue this. Uh, the name of the company is Cluely, and they promise that it will enable you to cheat on everything, which is kind of catchy. And their argument is, well, look, when calculators came out, everybody said that that would be cheating, and now it's very well accepted, and so on and so forth. But the thing that it got me thinking about this from a legal perspective, though, is so many depositions are taken via Zoom, and I mean this could be a great opportunity for mischief. Uh, on the one hand, by unscrupulous lawyers, but on the other hand, by witnesses. That a person goes in, gets coached for their deposition, what they should say, plug the stuff in that's taken virtually, and all of a sudden their answers are really good, but they might not have been as good. Or conversely, and maybe perhaps even more realistically, an expert could run this program, and the expert's deposition is being taken, and the expert is stumped or doesn't exactly know what to say. The tool would provide the answer. So, like a lot of things, it's interesting what they're doing, but it gives me some pause as to how it could impact our legal system,
This guy who
and
developed
how we
this
do
was on
things.
was on the Hard Fork podcast, the New York Times tech podcast, and I mean it's really interesting because he said he had thousands of people use this to get jobs at Amazon and Google and whatever else, and the Hard Fork guys are like, you see all these people are getting these coding jobs who don't really know how to code, and like it's it's uses I mean it's kind of clever because they're getting hired into jobs to like develop AI, but if they are actually kind of using and most people who are doing coding jobs these days are using AI
Right.
extensively in their coding work. It's not like they're just not using it. So the fact that they would use it in the exams, it doesn't, I don't know whether it's really cheating or not. It's really kind of an interesting question. But I
Yeah.
was thinking
So
about it
what's the
almost with
difference
regard to
between
like the bar exam because it's kind of a
Yeah.
test that people have to. These leak tests are things people prepare for like weeks and weeks and study and they go through prep courses. I mean, it's a bizarre process that this whole interview process for these coding jobs.
But what's the
Yeah.
difference between this and something like Quirius, which won Startup Alley this year, where it's like
Yeah.
they provide real-time interest for you while you're in a meeting with a client or while you're talking with people to help you, supplement your knowledge of something or maybe clarify a point or maybe look up something really quickly so that you have it in your head rather than waste time by typing it in. I mean, what's the difference between these types of tools? If they help you do what you're supposed to do more efficiently, that's kind of the point of it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think this is
oh,
sorry, I think this is an indictment on testing. I'm just,
Right. Yeah.
nothing about this tool is new. I mean, I haven't met a software engineer who's not using AI for coding, and they explain
Right.
to me whether it's super complex or something super simple. I don't really understand, you know, what is it we're trying to achieve here? The article says Amazon declined to comment. That's not good. So, because HR got involved, right? But like if we're looking for people to code and they have to know how to code manually, whatever that means nowadays, what for? Like this is a genuine question, right? Like what
Right.
is it that we're actually trying to hire? Do we need people who can problem solve, or do we need people who actually know COBOL and know how to write COBOL language and all these other languages? I really think this is about testing itself because I'm sorry, this company's premise, like Victor said, is nothing new.
yeah.
Which is also
There's
how
other
it's like the
companies
bar
like it.
exam, because what does the bar exam actually test for? And
Don't even get me started on
Yeah.
whether or not we should have a bar exam as a whole,
Yeah.
which is a whole other thing.
That's a
But
different issue.
yeah, but
But
I was gonna.
go
Oh,
ahead, Joe. Sorry. No, go
oh,
ahead.
I was just gonna say that I thought was really interesting about Steve's point is that we talk about things like Queryus and the FileVine deposition tool and so on as great things when the lawyer is using them. I'd never really thought about what happens when the expert witness is the one using them. And
Right.
that raises a whole different can of worms that I hadn't thought about until you mentioned it. And now that is a little worrisome.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's
we
and
have
it's
we
or
have
a corporate
cases.
representative, for example, that
Mhm.
would want to have a lot of facts and figures perhaps at their fingertips. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just I mean, maybe we're headed back to the days where we don't do remote depositions. They're all back in person again in order to ensure the integrity of the entire process. I don't know. It's crazy.
No, let's
They make
not.
them in
Let's
chips.
find an option B. Let's find an option B. Okay,
You can still
I
bring
don't want
laptops
this
in.
problem.
It's weird that the airlines and hotels are funding this. I wonder why that's like what financial stake they have in this.
I don't know. I think a lot of lawyers would be very happy if we could go back to all that travel time that we used to have to do for out-of-town depositions. It's a good way to meet your 2,400-hour quota.
I mean, there is a big difference though between Queryus and the FileVine tool and what this is doing, because with Queryus, it's saying here's some things maybe you want to think about, or some areas you want to follow up on, or here's some issues you may want to explore, but it's not telling you what to say to your client or telling
Right.
you tell them their case is no good because or something. Whereas this lead code cheating tool, I forget what they called it, is literally solving the problem for you while you're kind of sitting there pretending to be clicking keys on your keyboard. I mean, you're not, it's actually doing the work for you as the test taker, which is quite a different thing.
Yeah, I think I agree with Joe and Stephen here that we do need to figure out how we're going to manage this from at the court deposition level, because we already have some cases and examples of people trying to use AI to fill out court forms, to make arguments in court. Like we already have pro se litigants doing this. So I would be the we just haven't heard yet of an expert witness doing this. I am sure expert witnesses, there's someone out there using AI to whether it's consolidate their information or something like that. So doing things like remote witnessing, I don't think we can turn back the clock and go back to physical locations. There's so many logistical and financial reasons why we can't do that. But at the same time, again, what are we policing for? That's to me the top question here. These guys were able to raise 3.5 million. Oh no, they got kicked out of Colombia. That's gonna derail their careers forever. No, actually they'll probably help raise more money.
What the hell?
You
Yeah.
know?
Right.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
it's kind of with I could just see with an expert, it's sort of a slippery slope because an expert probably is not going to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to use this to quote cheat unquote. But I mean, I've taken a lot of depositions of experts, and you try to push them into areas where they have to say, I don't know the answer to that because it affects their credibility and how they appear on the stand. And this would, I mean, with this tool, you would always have an answer. You'd be very confident and self-assured and look really great. And so, yeah, it's an
But then the
interesting
AI deposition
question.
tool would say, well, wait a minute, didn't you give a deposition last year in which you said you don't know the
yeah,
answer to this?
Yeah,
I,
right.
that,
Or you're looking too smug. Say you don't know this, so you will be more credible.
that the not really legally related, but this company has an ad that they put together, like a showing how the tool works. And what's funny, the ad is charming, but also kind of self-defeating because the ad at the end of the ad, I'm not
Right.
sure the guy needed to invest in all of this in order to strike out with that woman. Which is, if you haven't watched this ad, that's how this ad goes, is he's using it in order to get through a date and it doesn't work. And I'm like, interesting way of advertising your product, showing it not work.
Right. Show it doesn't work.
Yeah,
Uh,
I watched that ad and I'm like, bro culture continues to dominate our tech world, and also really shows that it was created by two 21-year-olds. Not to be ageist, I just thought that's
yeah.
actually it's really funny because there, I mean, there is some people looking at AI and how it's disrupting dating apps and all those kind of things. There's actually really interesting stuff about that. But the fact that they use that as the example, I'm just like, guys, so what are we trying to do here? But I actually think all this publicity is going to help them, frankly, because other people are trying to enter into this space. And to me, the interview questions and that part, getting a job, is actually another big thing because there's companies trying to put in language. You didn't use AI to help apply for this job or interview for this job. And like, how are you supposed to police that activity at all? There's some interesting employment law issues there too.
So
Yeah,
sorry.
no, they're brilliant marketers at the end of the day. I mean, like in the sense of like, look, cheat on everything. That's going to get people's attention, right? It's going to immediate. I mean, that's what got all of our attention. Yeah, maybe the commercial thing with the striking out, maybe that wasn't the best idea, but this tool, hey, I have a tool that can cheat on everything. It's like, well, hey, of course I'm interested. Tell me about it.
Well, the guy who was on Hard Fork, the founder, this was like maybe a month or a month and a half ago. So it was before before Columbia had decided whether to kick him out yet. He had gone before a hearing board or something. He was waiting to hear on it. But he had used it to get a job at, I don't forget, what was it, Amazon or something, and they revoked the job. But then once all the publicity broke about that and about Columbia wanting to kick him out, then he started getting job offers coming in like crazy from all the big AI developer companies. So, and of course the sales went crazy for the product before, when it was still originally it was focused just on the leak code thing before it became sort of a broader cheating product. So yeah, that's not, I guess that's not Streisand effect, is it? I don't know. Whatever the effect is there of like you know, weird publicity driving sales and good things, I guess. But so Columbia kicks him out of school for doing this. But Victor, you had a story in which our president is trying to get schools to in fact do more to teach AI.
Yeah, so I mean nowadays whenever I hear Trump an executive order, I immediately shudder. I'm like, oh no, what's he doing now? But this one, I had no problem with in principle. It was going to order the appropriate integration of AI into education to ensure the United States remains a global leader in this technological revolution. It's brilliant, very perfect, nothing more for me to say. Of course, the problem is then he directs the Secretary of Education to be the one to implement this. And it's a good thing we have a fully funded, fully staffed, um, highly respected, and secure Department of Education that's going to implement this, very necessary executive order. It's look, the idea is great, and hey, look, you know what? All those coders that we're talking about that are looking for jobs that are in AI, maybe they can go teach coding to a bunch of middle schoolers or high schoolers. Maybe that's the way they do it. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a great idea in theory, but
Well, as a technical matter, I think one correct minor correction is I believe it's A1. For those who haven't caught this, the Secretary of Education consistently refers to artificial intelligence as A1, which I don't know, some problems reading the cue cards. I don't know, but so
Wait, is that what's
and
really happening? I'm not paying attention to you guys right now anymore. Is that
that's a
what's
good
really
move.
happening?
That's a good
No,
move.
that really
yeah,
happened.
You roll with
look,
that.
look, Linda McMahon is a highly respected professional who has delivered some of the most important moments of my life, like Hulk Hogan winning the title at Madison Square Garden, and Stone Cold Steve Austin winning the World Championship. So she's very qualified to teach us about this kind of stuff.
AI, tasty AI. All right. Well, yeah, when I saw it, I was sort of the same reaction when I saw Trump issued an executive order on that. I'm like, all right, what's really going on here? And I couldn't quite find anything bad in it, other than, as you say, he's dismantling the department that's supposed to implement this order. But that's a side note, I guess.
To be very
Um,
cynical, my assumption is this is a way of funneling money, just basically a pass-through to funnel money to American AI development as a way of short-circuiting China. That's right. Like it has to have a national security vague national security explanation, because otherwise, why would they do it? Because it's not like they care about teaching. So that's my theory, that they're trying to bail out the big AI companies somehow.
He's
Yeah,
doing a
because this
contract with Musk
reminds
to send a
me,
teacher to every elementary school in the country.
an AI teacher to
An AI teacher.
elementary school in the country. It just reminds me of when like Google had was it Google or Microsoft that was like giving free laptops or something to schools back in the day, and or free, but probably
Yeah,
the
IBM
government.
did. I think IBM did it for a while. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, because I wrote an article earlier about the first executive order about AI regulation, which had a lot more meat in there. I'll put it in the chat. This one I think is actually a little bit of a follow-up to it, because it was talking about in that first order, where it undid Biden's stuff, that US should be like the dominant or supreme, I forget the words, but basically like numero uno for AI. And
A1. They
so
should be A1.
I can't take this word seriously. Okay, A1. So they should be A1. So in order to be A1, you have to start from the bottom. So I can't take this seriously. We're talking about federal regulation here, folks.
No algorithm left behind.
All right, well,
Oh, no laughs to that. Oh, come on. All right.
all right. Well, continuing with our education theme here, I'm going to turn to a story I did this week. I don't know, Joe, I didn't know if you wrote about this at all. The employment rate, which I thought was interesting. The ABA came out with its study this week on, or it's not study, just data this week on employment of 2024 law grads. And at a time in which, everybody, we've all been talking for the last year or two about the fact that AI is going to take away jobs from young associates and new lawyers, and it's going to be a tough job market for people coming in right now, but thanks to AI doing all the work of lawyers. And yet, the data coming out of out of the ABA is that in fact this has been like a record year for employment for new lawyers, and that first of all, a record year for law school graduates overall, and a record year for those law school graduates finding employment. And some interesting things that came out of it. Law firm hiring was up 13.4% over the year before of new lawyers, which is a big jump, needless to say. And weirdly, government hiring of lawyers saw a 20% jump over the year before. Go figure there. I mean, everything we're hearing is that government lawyers are getting, let go left and right. And of course, obviously, there's state government and there's federal government and there's all sorts of layers of government. But I mean, one thought I had when I saw that was, well, this is kind of old data. Maybe it took a while for this for the layoffs to start filtering into the data. But this is reported as of like a few weeks ago. I think it was April, right around the beginning of April, mid-April, something like that. So this is pretty current data. So I don't know. I mean, it makes me wonder whether all of the doomsayers who have been predicting the loss of lawyers' jobs thanks to AI, or maybe a little too early in their doomsaying, and maybe it is that in fact, law firms. I mean, the other thing that made it kind of counterintuitive to me also is just the economy hasn't been all that great, and we have an administration in Washington who's been trashing law firms left and right. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting, and I think it suggests that there's still plenty of room for human lawyering out there in addition to AI lawyering.
Bob, I have a question. Why do you think those numbers are up? Or
Why
for
are
the whole
they,
panel?
why are they up?
Yeah.
Well, I think it was supposed. I mean, I think everyone thought that, once stuff hit the fan, then like everything was going to go down. But I mean, it's possible that I haven't looked at the methodology for the study. I mean, it's possible that the stats just haven't reflected it yet because I mean, we don't know the extent of the layoffs just yet, and we don't. I mean, law firms are starting to cut back, but we haven't seen the full extent of that. And look, if the economy gets worse, because of what terror or Fed Reserve stuff or whatever, then things are going to get a lot worse probably. So no, but I think it's because everyone expected the numbers to be really, really bad. That because they weren't, then it was a surprise. But then again, it's just like, yeah, we don't know. I mean, because this is data from I think the last two graduating classes.
Well, it's the
Uh,
numbers are, yeah, well, the numbers were for the 2024 graduating class versus the 2023 graduating class, but reported as of 3 weeks ago in terms of their hiring status, their employment status. So in theory, it's supposed
yeah,
to be currently showing, how successful 20
yeah.
graduates from 10 months ago were in getting employment during that time.
And also it's not all like lawyer jobs. Like they have like JD Advantage jobs and like
Right.
other things. So it's not all like law firm jobs or like government lawyer jobs. They'll be like maybe like headhunter jobs too or like things like that.
Yeah, that's right. But the number of jobs requiring a
JD.
JD did go up as well. It was like 82.2% of the 38,937 2024 law school graduates obtained jobs requiring bar admission. That could be part-time, full-time, law firm, whatever. But that's an increase over the previous year also. Not a huge
It's
increase, a 2-point increase.
it, it's going to take some time to cycle through the system, and often law is like turning around a Titanic. It often requires a shock to the system. They will continue doing things that are not necessarily in their best interest until they're financially forced to sometimes. And I think if we have some serious recession, that's when the recalibration happens.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like because you know, it's like waiting for the market to readjust, right? But like you said, the law is very slow on this. I'm still surprised though, like you said, Bob, how high the numbers are, particularly all the AI stuff. I mean, forget about, what's happening in the White House. The AI stuff has been going on for years, and it looks like the numbers are going higher. And I think as we look at the market right now, people still want like actual humans for lawyers. Right? And I think we've been consistent on this. AI will definitely do some things, but there's still things that AI can't do that you still need like a human lawyer to help you with.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a good point at which to talk about the importance of the human lawyers at the Justice Department, because Joe, they've proven their value there, right?
Yeah. So, all right. So this one is theoretically, this is another one of those classic, theoretically not a legal tech story, but the more you dig into it, the more you think it might be. So the Supreme Court rules that they have to, the government has to get back the person that the government has admitted they sent to El Salvador in gulags accidentally. Oops. The government's trying not to do that. The Supreme Court said, you got to do that. The specific wording of that Supreme Court decision is that they have to facilitate the release from custody of Mr. Abrego Garcia. Anyway, whatever it is, it's released from custody in El Salvador. Since then, the administration, driven by like Stephen Miller telling Trump on camera, no, they ruled 9-0 the other way, which isn't true. Based on a lot of these comments, the administration has played with the wording to suggest that what the Supreme Court said was that they have to facilitate the return of this guy. And their argument is, well, to facilitate the return, all we have to do is say that he's allowed to go through the process on the back end. And so we aren't blocking that, but we don't have to do anything to get him out of prison, which is not what the word release means. Whatever. Fast forward, the hearing, this is kicked back down to the district court. District court says, we're going to have discovery on this. They have interrogatories. The government objects to these interrogatories. And one of the things they say in their objection to the interrogatories is that they object to the premise of the first interrogatory because it is based on the idea that we're supposed to get his release, and we aren't. String cite for the U.S. Supreme Court slip opinion, and then they quote it in quotation marks. All we're supposed to do is get his return, which is not the quote. It's completely made up. It has nothing to do with that. So this is disingenuous. It's been called out by the judge as disingenuous, possibly a bad action, sanctionable, etc. So that's a political story. Now, where does this become a tech story? I think I think this is an AI thing. The reason I think this is, one, the DOJ is, we've heard that basically no DOJ person other than the 4 or 5 political appointees are willing to touch these cases at this point. So they're overworked and in over their heads. And if they were using, say, Westlaw, Lexis, something like that, to get this quote, they would have, copied and pasted it in, and it would not be wrong. To have written it, and if they were trying to willfully mischaracterize it, knowing it was wrong, they would have typed it and not put it in quotation marks. But to put it in quotation marks like that suggests to me that they got it from somewhere. And where I think they probably got it is a garbage in, garbage out moment. I think what they did is utilize some AI to help them do it. And they wrote a prompt, and this goes back to all of those Chat GPT cases we've been with bad lawyering that we've talked about. It's not the GPT's fault. It's that a lawyer asked a question that was dumb and wrong and didn't do their job. And I think they typed in something like, oh, we need the quote from the Supreme Court opinion. Tell us, what was the quote where the Supreme Court said that we have to return him? And it was like, oh, well, said this, whatever. I think that's what happened. I think they prompted it to get the thing that they didn't want, or that they wanted, not that wasn't real, and then they just cut and pasted it in, because there's no other way that I could see why they would cut and paste it like that. And the other quasi smoking gun is it's also got a typo in it at the very end. It's like they say, instead of get released from custody in El Salvador, like it really says, they have it be returned to the United States, singular, which to me is they highlighted something and left off the S and then dropped it right on in. Unless they just don't know that it's the United States, which I guess I shouldn't put past them.
I just want to congratulate you on the humor of this article. Like, when I was reading this, I was just like, so I'm just never leaving my country. But but the humor that you used in articulating it was like fantastic.
Oh,
I
thank
agree.
you.
I agree with you. Like, I'm tired of writing about articles about like, hey, lawyers, educate yourselves on AI. But this is actually a really good article about, hey, lawyers, educate yourselves on how to use AI. Because I agree, it's obviously an error of copy paste from AI. It's just too obvious, and they're gonna get sanctioned for it because all the lawyers who get in trouble get sanctioned for it. But like,
I did wonder though whether AI, and I mean in the old days of AI, of generative AI, these LLMs were all using data that was a year old and several months old. They weren't using current data. And given that quote that they misused was taken out of a case that was a few days old at that point, I wondered whether AI could have had that quote and picked up on it and provided it to the lawyer. But I think I've since realized that yes, it could have, because they're all doing real-time searching. And as a matter of fact, somebody pointed out to me that they this week that they had done a search on something, done a prompt on something, and part of the answer that whatever AI tool they were giving them, like quoted a story that I had just done this week or something. So
Yeah.
it is happening.
Yeah, and even if it wasn't pulling it, there is. This goes to the quote that I always give in these panels, that it's mansplaining as a service. If you say to it, give us the quote where about return to the United States, it's going to try to give that to you. If you ask a dumb question like that, it's going to try to give that back. And I also think that there were so many news stories where, to the extent, so I think it could just be that it was prompted bad. But to the extent it is pulling real-time data, there were so many news stories that quote Stephen Miller saying in the Oval Office, no, it was about returning to the United States. There were so many, oh, I got reactions. I didn't mean that on my screen there. There's about Caroline, the press secretary, talking about it as return. And if there's enough media that's repeating this mischaracterization, and then you prompt it, give me this mischaracterization, it's from the Supreme Court, then I could see this happening.
The other part of this that makes it a legal tech story is that guess what, lawyers? There is software out there that will check the quotes in your briefs and make sure you're actually what you've put in as a quote is actually in the court decision and that it's actually properly cited, and and all of that. This is their easy fix for all of these problems.
Maybe
Yeah,
they were deliberate.
except some of those programs make more mistakes than some of the other ones, according to the AA folks.
Well, I mean, this is a, well, I mean, the things that there are, yeah, I don't know. I think the ones that
And
are basically just proofreading ones that are going to tell you, yes, this quotation exists in the case that you're checking. Not that they're not even AI driven; they're just
yeah,
textual, and I think they work pretty well. But
I just got a message from Zoom that is asking me to confirm my speaking language. It's apparently sounds like I may have switched to a different language. It's called gibberish, I think. I don't know.
well, be comforted that it's not just you because that's happened to me several times this week. I don't know if Zoom's got something new, but it keeps asking me if I want to translate. It was actually somebody else on a Zoom call yesterday. Asked me if I wanted to translate. And no, English is good, thank you. Um, all right. So let's see, where are we? One other story I wanted to talk about this week was this study that came out from Action Step, and it's like we talk about this every week. Everybody does studies. They're like getting to be a dime a dozen in a sense, and a lot of them are all just on lawyers' AI adoption and AI usage. And I think we talked about last week the fact that had been several recently that I then dumped them all into AI to see how they compare to each other, and it turned out they were somewhat consistent. But so here's another study that came out this week from Action Step. But a couple of things that were interesting. One is it focused on mid-sized law firms, which tends to be sometimes an underreported on segment. We had a lot of talk about smaller firms, a lot of talk about big firms, but sometimes not as much so about mid-sized firms. And it had some findings on AI. I don't even remember exactly what they were, but they're kind of the same old thing. Yeah, lawyers are using AI for summaries and drafting and that sort of thing. But what I thought was more interesting was kind of its findings on technological fragmentation and or basically context switching. One of the things that it found is that in the course of an average working on in the average course of working on a client's matter, a lawyer is going to switch to different technology tools an average of 6.6 times. And we all on this panel sit through a lot of the same demos, and it's a problem that I hear a lot of vendors kind of talking about this issue of lawyers having to context switch, of lawyers wanting something that all works within a single workflow. I don't know that anybody's quite mastered the delivery of that sort of soup to nuts or end-to-end workflow for lawyers, but this kind of gives us some numbers on just what that problem looks like for lawyers. And context switching kind of really sucks when you're working on, especially when you're working on legal things. If you're in the middle of writing something and your mind is sort of absorbed in that, and suddenly you got to stop and switch over to some other program to enter time or pull up a document or whatever it might be. Then you got to like get back and figure out where was I and what was I thinking, and we all know the problem and we all experience it all the time. But I thought that was just an interesting point, and I think it in fact kind of validates I think the argument that a lot of vendors are out there making about the need for a more a smoother workflow for lawyers. We were talking, I forget whether it was last week, a couple weeks ago after Legal Week, how a lot of the vendors at Legal Week were all talking about, come into our platform and you can kind of do everything you need to do in our platform. LexisNexis is pitching that, and the Net Documents has been pitching that. So this validates that idea, I think, a little bit.
I thought it was good that it pointed out definitionally that what firms that it was looking at, and it did define mid sizes between 50 and what 250 lawyers, which I think was good to, because we can all sort of quarrel about what it is or isn't a mid size, but for at least they defined what it is they were looking at when they said mid size.
Yeah, I didn't put that in my story, but I remember it did do that in the report.
Yeah, it's in
Because
the
I think
story.
like when we talk at Clio, they put it at like 20 or more as a mid-sized firm.
Right.
Yeah, you have that information in the story. I thought it
I thought
was
I thought it was
yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Might be.
I thought it was really interesting. I agree with the comment in the chat that I actually think these numbers are underreported when you think about even switching from the Microsoft tools to all these other tools. That's a whole other switching. I think like version control is like so huge in law firms. Billing is so huge. Like I really think this is a really good report to kind of pinpoint what we hear anecdotally from lawyers about why they're not adopting all these tools. When I thought about who's really doing this the best as a one size fit all, maybe Clio, but Clio has a very specific niche. It's not going to fit for everyone, and it's not for these mid-sized firms. I can see some of these firms it wouldn't fit for them. So, um, these are kind of bigger tech issues too that go beyond the legal landscape, right? Other industries are also dealing with these kind of inefficiencies of switching from one platform to another, and I wonder how this is going to affect tech adoption in the long run. I think lawyers are actually more down for this now than they were 5, 10 years ago, but people don't want to have to use 10 to 15 different systems um, to go through client files. That's not sustainable. And the next generation lawyer is going to be like, why can't I just do everything in Google? Like this just like real talk. So I wonder um I kind of wonder what the solution is to this, because there does need to be a solution to this if we really want to move forward.
But then what happens then? Because then it's like if you have a one size fits all, then immediately people are going to be like, oh, well, it can't possibly do things as well as like the specialized programs can do. Like, how is this Goliath going to understand the problems that this smaller company has been doing this for like years and years and years and specialized that how are they going to understand it in a way that that the specialized company won't? And then it becomes a question of, well, if you want to get it done, you got to go with the best programs. And if you end up having to use 5 different programs, and that's just the price of business. So I can see arguments on both sides. There's always going to be the argument of, okay, well, it makes it easier if you just do one thing for everything. But then, if you want to get, if you don't trust that one or if you're not sure if that one program can do all these things the way you need it to do, then you have no choice but to do the a la carte method.
Something else I totally forgot to mention that I meant to mention about this. There was something that jumped out in the survey that is gonna be wrong. Was the finding that it's what I wrote in the story. The investment there were gaps in firms' current technology implementation. It said, for example, the report finds only 28% of mid-sized law firms have implemented legal accounting applications, and only 20% say their firm is invested in time tracking technology. That can't possibly be right, can it?
We hang out with a very self-selecting group of people. I always remind myself that when we in particular talk to people, they are self-selected to be much more savvy than the average lawyer.
But time tracking technology, only 20% of firms. I mean, that they're all keeping it on paper. No, that just it
Well,
doesn't.
that's a great question. So like when I started practicing, how old am I? 29, a couple years ago. Anyway, when I started practicing, it was software, but I entered it was point one and it was whatever. I think when they say time tracking software, I wonder if they're talking about stuff that's like watching what you do and telling you,
Automated. Yeah.
saying, oh yeah. And that I think is really true. They probably haven't implemented that widespread.
All right, that's fair. Yeah, that does make sense. That could be what it is. But then again, they also have the accounting thing of still, I don't know. Anyway,
I'm
who
not
knows?
surprised by the accounting one. Again, we're self-selecting. This is mid-sized too, Bob. This isn't AM 100 firms.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they don't have it. Like, how many times have we been? I mentioned Clio, right? How many times at Clio Cloud have they had sessions about their accounting tools? Like, why would they even push that? Because they know.
Yeah, they aren't
Yeah,
using
but
it.
Clio's
Yeah.
smaller firms. I mean,
Well,
mostly.
and I
I mean,
go
I know
the
they don't say that anymore, but that's
and I think I talk a lot in the past about the dumbbell effect for tech because big law spends a bunch on tech because they have a bunch to spend, and small law spends a bunch on tech because they need it to survive. And mid law, like I really feel like there's probably, when you talk about accounting, there's probably a firm that's the most important firm in Nebraska who has the same clients they had 50 years ago, and Debbie handles our books, and that's just how it goes. And they don't have a software for it because she's been with the company for 35 years and she's got it.
so mid-law is between two dumbbells.
In effect, like the dumbbell effect. Let's not. I'm not gonna cast any aspersions there.
Yeah, all right. All right. Julie, I didn't skip you over. You didn't have a story this week, right?
No. I was going to talk about regulation again, and I was like, I gotta just stop writing about regulation because no one wants to hear about legal regulation. I want to talk about California bar exam. What are they gonna do next? Because they got a lot to fix. But no. This is way more interesting. But yeah, just to piggyback on Joe's point too, like mid-size, there's a huge variety of competency and risk, like level of risk, and there's just way more variables within that group than small firms and AM 100 firms in terms of being able to even implement these tools.
All right. I was about to say I really need to rush off because I have a product briefing and I just checked my email and I got an email from them saying, sorry, we're closing our financing round right now. I have to cancel. I've never gotten an email like that before. Did you mean to tell me that? I don't know.
There you go.
Anyway, all right. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do it next week or not. We will see. We'll check in. We'll check in midweek or so and see how it's going. But if not, we'll be back the week after that. And you guys are going to North Carolina for ILTA.
South Carolina,
South,
South
yeah.
Carolina.
Myrtle
That's
Beach.
what, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or something?
Yep.
Yeah.
And maybe part of Wednesday, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to hearing about that. All right. Well, thanks to everybody. Good to see you all, and hope to see you back here maybe next week.
Well, have a good weekend.
All right.